Hello everyone and welcome to my Soap Twist 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The hospital room was a sterile cocoon with white walls and an antiseptic aroma that contrasted sharply with the emotional tempest gathering within. Taylor Hayes sat at Ridge Forrester's bedside, her hands tightly clutched in her lap and fingers twisting the beautiful gold bracelet on her left hand. The cardiac monitor beeped constantly, a tempo for her racing thoughts. Ridge, still weak from the injury that had brought him here, peered at her with those penetrating eyes that could see through her shields. His face, pale and darkened by beard, retained the intensity that had captivated her to him decades before. She had come to confess a truth so deeply buried that it felt like she was excavating her own soul to reveal it. "Ridge," she said, just above a whisper, "there's something I need to tell you." Her throat clenched, as if her body battled against the words. She had practiced this moment 1,000 times in the long nights since discovering the secret, but no amount of practice could soften the sharp edge of what she was about to say. He shifted slightly, wincing as he repositioned himself against the cushions. "Taylor, what is it? You've been acting strangely this week. Just tell me." His voice was kind but forceful, the tone of a man who'd been through too many storms to be easily spooked. But she knew it would shake him to his core. She took a long breath, her gaze sinking to the ground. The linoleum tiles blurred as tears welled up unexpectedly. "It's about Steffi," she explained, the name sticking in her throat like a shard of glass. She's not your biological daughter." The stillness was deafening, heavier than the sound of hospital machinery. Ridge's face froze, his eyes narrowing as if he hadn't understood her correctly. "What are you talking about?" he inquired, his voice low and almost menacing. "Taylor, what do you mean?" She forced herself to meet his stare, her heart racing so fast she feared it might burst. "I found out a few weeks ago," she continued, her words stumbling out, anxious to fill the silence. "I was organizing old medical records after all we've been through. There was a mix-up at the hospital when Steffi was born. They labeled it a clerical error. But it brought me to the truth. I got a DNA test done, Ridge. I didn't want to believe it, either, but the effects were obvious." "Steffi isn't yours," Ridge said, clenching his palm on the blanket. His jaw tightened, and she feared he was going to lash out, but he only gazed at her, his eyes seeking for any hint that this was a mistake, a cruel joke. "How did you not know?" he asked, his voice breaking. "How could you have not told me until now?" Taylor's tears overflowed, running burning tracks down her cheeks. "I did not know, Ridge. I swore. When Steffi was born, everything was chaotic. You recall how it went, Phoebe and Steffi, twins, problems, hospital stays. I was so intent on keeping kids alive that I didn't question anything. The hospital never told me there was the chance that something like this could have happened." She sought for his hand, but he pulled away, the rejection hitting her more than she imagined. "Who is her father, then?" he demanded, his voice raised. "If not me, then who is it?" Taylor's breath caught. This was the part she dreaded the most, the one that kept her up, staring at the ceiling as the weight of her previous mistakes crushed her. "It's James," she muttered. "James Warwick." Ridge's face crumpled with disappointment and betrayal. James Warwick, the doctor who had been her companion and confidant throughout one of her darkest periods in life. She and Ridge had been away for a while, and she had assumed their marriage was gone. She'd never informed Ridge about the brief, reckless night she'd had with James, a moment of weakness caused by loneliness and sorrow. She'd buried it, sure it meant nothing and would never come to light. But now it was unraveling everything. "James?" Ridge repeated, his voice hollow. "You were with him, right?" "It was one night," she replied hastily, her words tripping over each other. "That was a mistake, Ridge. I was disoriented, and you were with Brooke, so I assumed we were done. I never meant for it to happen, and I never thought Steffi could be his." Ridge looked away, staring at the wall as if he could force himself out of this situation. "Steffi," he mumbled, his voice full of sorrow. "My little girl. My Steffi." The words pierced Taylor's heart, each one cutting harder. She understood how much Ridge adored Steffi, how he had always seen her as his pride and legacy. The notion of taking that away from him was heartbreaking. "I'm so sorry," she wailed, her hands over her face. "I wasn't sure how to tell you. I did not want to hurt you or her. I thought I could bury it, and nothing would change. But I couldn't continue to live with the lie. You and she both deserve the truth." Ridge remained silent for a long time, his breathing unsteady. When he finally spoke, his tone was chilly and distant. "Does she know?" Taylor shook her head. "No. I have not told her. I wanted to tell you first. I thought we could figure out how to handle it together." He snapped, his eyes filled with rage. "How do you manage situations like this, Taylor? You're telling me that the girl I've raised and loved all her life isn't mine. And you expect me to do what? Decide how to crush her heart?" "I do not know," Taylor cried, her voice breaking. "I'm not sure what to do, Ridge. I am afraid. I adore Steffi. She's my daughter, regardless of what the DNA says. But I couldn't hide it from you. I couldn't bear the guilt." Ridge raked a hand through his hair, his fury apparent. "You should have told me sooner," he remarked. "You should have notified me as soon as you suspected. How should I look at her now? How am I expected to be her parent knowing this?" "You are her father," Taylor replied firmly, leaning closer. "You reared her, loved her, and were present for every moment of her life. That does not alter due to biology. You're her father, Ridge. You always will be." He shook his head, his eyes brimming with unshed tears. "It's not so straightforward, Taylor. You know it isn't. So, what about James? Does he know?" Taylor paused, her stomach churning. "I haven't told him," she acknowledged. "I did not know how. He's been gone from our lives for so long. I have no idea where he is right now." Ridge laughed bitterly. "Great. So not only do I lose my kid, but we also need to seek down a guy from your past to figure out what happens next." Taylor pleaded, "Don't say that. You didn't lose her. Steffi adores you. She will always love you. We can work this out together, Ridge. We can make this work." But Ridge's face was a mask of pain, his eyes remote. "I need time," he admitted finally. "I have to think." Taylor nodded, her heart falling. I can't do this right now." She stood, legs trembling, and groped for her purse. "I'll give you space," she said quietly. "But please, Ridge, do not lock me out. We have to tackle this collectively. For Steffi." He didn't react, his attention locked on the window through which the late afternoon sun streamed, spreading long shadows throughout the room. Taylor lingered for a time, hoping for a sign, a remark, or anything to bridge the gap that had formed between them. But there was nothing. She turned to leave, the weight of her confession weighing down on her with each step. Taylor arrived home to a quiet Forrester mansion, the expansive elegance of which felt more like a mausoleum than a home. She dropped her keys on the counter, her hands quivering, and poured herself a glass of wine, knowing it would not relieve the pain in her chest. Steffi was upstairs, probably working late as usual, her steely determination mirroring Ridge's. Taylor's heart wrenched at the prospect of giving her daughter the truth, of breaking her very identity. She fell into the couch, the glass still in her hand, and allowed her thoughts to drift back to the early days. She remembered the first time she held Steffi and Phoebe, their small bodies delicate yet perfect. She'd been overjoyed with love, convinced that she and Ridge could overcome anything as long as they had their family. But life had a way of distorting even the strongest relationships, revealing secrets that should have remained hidden. Her thoughts were disturbed by the sound of footsteps on the stairs. Steffi appeared, her dark hair pulled back in an untidy bun, and her look was one of tiredness and resolve. "Mom, you okay?" she inquired, hesitating at the foot of the stairs. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Taylor faked a grin, her heart thumping. "Just a long day," she remarked, her voice wavering. "How are you? Working late again?" Steffi nodded and crossed the room to sit alongside her. "Yes, the new collection is kicking my butt. But we'll get there." She tilted her head and studied Taylor's expression. "Are you sure you are okay?" Taylor lied. "I'm fine." Her throat tightened. She wanted to tell Steffi everything, to remove the bandage and let the truth come out. But the words would not come. Not yet. Ridge was still reeling from the hit, and she had no idea how to lessen it. Steffi reached out and squeezed her hand. "You know you can speak with me, right?" "Whatever it is." Taylor's eyes welled up with emotions as she gripped back and nodded. "I understand, sweetheart." "I know." As Steffi returned upstairs, Taylor's gaze fell on a framed portrait on the mantel, a snapshot of her, Ridge, and Steffi from years before, all smiles and brightness. The recollection felt like a lifetime ago, untainted by the shadow of secrets. She worried if they'd ever be able to return to that light, or if this reality would forever darken their family. Days stretched into weeks, and Taylor and Ridge's silence deepened. He'd been released from the hospital, but he'd decided to stay at the Forrester guest home, stating he needed room to process. Taylor didn't press him, but each missed call and curt text seemed like a new wound. She focused on her work, putting herself into her practice, but the secret gnawed at her, a continual reminder of the rift she had made. Steffi, meantime, noticed the tension but did not press. She was too preoccupied with her own world, running Forrester Creations, navigating her own convoluted love life, to delve deeper. However, Taylor was well aware that the truth would eventually be revealed. Secrets like this did not remain buried forever, especially in a turbulent household like theirs. Taylor was sitting alone in her office one evening when she was startled by a knock on the door. She looked up to see James Warwick standing there, his familiar face aged but with the quiet intensity she recalled. Her heart had stopped. She hadn't seen him in years and hadn't even known how to contact him. But here he stood, as if summoned by her shame. "James," she whispered quietly. "What are you doing here?" He walked inside and closed the door behind him. "I got your message," he said simply. "About Steffi." Taylor's blood ran cold. She had not sent any messages. But when she gazed into his eyes, she understood that someone else had, someone who wished to reveal this secret. The question was, who? And now that the truth is free, what will they do with it? The news reverberated throughout the Forrester family, with each member dealing with the fact in their own unique way. When Steffi eventually realized the truth, she was crushed, her sense of self disturbed. She faced Taylor, her rage hot and unfiltered, but underneath it was a deep sadness, a dread that she had lost the father she had always known. Ridge, divided between love and betrayal, battled to resolve his emotions, his link with Steffi tested but not severed. James, thrown back into their lives, had his own reckoning, wrestling with the realization that he had a daughter he had never met. Taylor, at the center of it all, suffered the brunt of their anguish. She had intended to protect her family and shelter them from the reality, but in doing so, she had only inflicted additional pain. The path to recovery was long and unclear, punctuated by tears, disagreements, and moments of hesitant forgiveness. Throughout it all, one thing was clear. Their love, albeit damaged, was stronger than any secret. And in that love, they found the fortitude to rebuild, to redefine what it meant to be a family, even if the wounds of the past lingered. The rain fell down in slow, heavy sheets, like if the sky was mourning alongside her. Claire stood by the window, hands trembling as she placed a letter to her chest. Her tears had already caused the letters to blur, but she didn't need to read them again. She had written them herself, and each sentence was seared into her heart. Daniel remained slept upstairs, his breathing calm and even, oblivious that the world he had known for 22 years was about to implode. She couldn't determine which was worse, the secret she'd kept from him or the fact that she thought she was protecting him by keeping it. However, falsehoods do not protect. Rather, they wait silently until they are ready to destroy. The door creaked open behind her, and Claire turned to see Michael standing there. His skin looked pale, and his eyes were red-rimmed from a restless night. For 30 years, he had been her spouse, companion, and anchor. And today, he would transform into something else, the man whose heart she was about to permanently break. "Have you slept at all?" he asked gently, his voice trembling. She shakes her head. "I can't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face." Michael took a hesitant step forward, brushing his hand on hers. "We don't have to do this today." "Yes," Claire said, her voice shaking. "We do. He deserves the truth, no matter how painful it is." Michael averted his gaze to the gray morning. The storm outside had begun to subside, with thunder rolling off into the distance. "You should be the one to tell him," the man added. "He trusts you more." Claire bit her lip and tasted blood. "That's exactly why it has to come from me." They sat in stillness for a long, the type that absorbs both sound and time. Claire remembered the first time she held Daniel. He was little, pink, and wonderful. The nurse had delivered him to her with a smile, and for that little moment, the guilt had vanished. She had convinced herself that love was sufficient, and that love would render fact superfluous. But, as she had learnt, love was never stronger than truth. It simply delayed the repercussions. When Daniel returned downstairs an hour later, rubbing sleep from his eyelids, the world appeared normal. He gave a small smile as he saw them at the kitchen table. "You two look like you've been awake all night. Is everything okay?" Claire attempted to smile, but it came out incorrect. Michael's fingers curled around his coffee mug. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, signaling the moment when their lives would be divided into before and after. "Danny," Claire said, her voice wavering. "There is something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you a long time ago." He frowned, puzzled. "You are scaring me, Mom. What's happening?" Claire swallowed hard and forced the words out. "You're not Michael's biological son." The silence that followed was long and oppressive. Daniel squinted, as if he had not heard her correctly. His jaw twitched, and he chuckled briefly and disbelievingly. "What?" Claire murmured. "That's not funny." "I'm so sorry." He looked between them, hoping for denial, someone to tell him that this was a tragic mistake. But Michael was unable to meet his eyes. His quiet said everything. Daniel pulled away from the table so rapidly that his chair clattered to the floor. "No," he replied, shaking his head. "No, that is not true. Dad, say something." Michael finally looked up, tears forming. "It does not change anything, son. You are still my boy." "Don't," Daniel snarled. "Don't call me that right now." Claire rose up and reached for him. "Please, Daniel, listen." "To what?" he yelled. "That everything in my life has been a lie? That you both decided I didn't deserve to know who I am." His voice cracked, and she saw the child he had once been, the youngster who had run into her arms when he was terrified of the world. But that youngster was no longer there, replaced by a man who had recently realized that the truth was a blade. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she whispered, tears flowing down her cheeks. "It happened before you were born. Michael and I were apart for a while. I made an error. When I found out I was pregnant, I was unsure what to do. He forgave me, and we agreed to raise you together." Daniel's breath came in rapid rushes. "So he knew? Did he know all along?" Michael nodded slowly. "I did. Because I adored you. Because I couldn't fathom my life without you." Daniel looked at him as if he were seeing him for the first time. "You should have told me, both of you. I had the right to know." Claire attempted to speak, but her words deserted her. She wanted to tell him how she had spent every day, scared that this moment would arrive. She had searched for the ideal time, but it had never existed. That every birthday, graduation, and hug had been tinged with remorse. But the truth had arrived too late to matter. Daniel grabbed his jacket and went towards the door. "I need to get out of here." "Please," Claire begged. "Just let me explain." "There's nothing left to explain," he interrupted, his tone frigid. Then he was gone. The door banged, leaving an echo that lasted long after his footsteps had vanished. Claire went to her knees, sobbing and shaking her shoulders. Michael knelt beside her, holding her tight, but his tears flowed silently. Days passed without a word. Claire would sit by the phone every night, looking at it until her eyes burned. The silence was awful. She had lived in fear of this secret for years, but she had no idea how empty the truth would feel once it was revealed. On day 5, the phone finally rung. She grabbed it so swiftly, she nearly dropped it. "Mom," Daniel said, his voice subdued and sleepy. "I am at the old cabin." Claire closed her eyes, feeling both relief and sorrow at once.
"Can I come to see you?"
A long pause. "Yeah," he replied finally. "I think we need to talk." When she came, the air smelled of pine and burning. Daniel sat on the porch steps, looking out over the lake. His eyes were angry, but his wrath had melted into something else, something heavier. "I spent my whole life trying to be like Dad," he added without looking at her. "Every decision I made was intended to make Dad proud. And now I don't even know who I am." Claire sat alongside him, keeping a close distance. "You are still the same guy, Daniel. You're still my son." He laughed cruelly. "Your son, yes, but not his. He may not have your blood, but he is the one who reared you. The one who taught you to ride a bike and stayed awake with you when you had nightmares. That is real, Daniel. Biology cannot change it." He turned to her, tears in his eyes. "Who is my biological father?" Claire paused, the name burning in her throat. "His name is Andrew. He perished in a vehicle accident while you were a baby. He never knew about you." Daniel's shoulders dropped, and neither of them spoke for quite some time. The lake rippled slowly, and the wind carried a slight aroma of rain. When he eventually spoke, it was quiet. "I don't know if I can forgive you." "I don't expect you to," she told me. "Not right now. Perhaps not ever. But I need you to know that everything I did, every lie I said, was motivated by love rather than shame." He looked down at his hands. "Love shouldn't hurt this much." "No," Claire said quietly. "It shouldn't." They stayed there until the sun started to set behind the trees, the light turning gold and gentle. Claire wanted to reach for him, but didn't. She understood that forgiveness could not be begged for. It had to be earned. When Daniel finally stood, he gazed at her with weary melancholy. "I'm heading home tomorrow. I am not sure what occurs after that, but I will try." "For Dad," Claire said, her tears flowing freely. "That's all I could ever ask." He walked back inside, leaving her on the porch as the first stars appeared. The night was silent, but not empty. She discovered a glimmer of hope somewhere in the solitude. Weeks have passed. When Daniel returned home, things were different. Meals were calmer, and laughter was unusual. They began to heal, albeit slowly and painfully. Michael never stopped treating him like a son, and Daniel never stopped loving him, even when it came with difficult questions. Months later, Claire discovered Daniel sitting by the fireplace, staring into the flames. She sat alongside him and did not talk until he did. "I went to the cemetery today," he explained gently, "to visit Andrew's grave. I hoped to feel something, but I did not. Not the way I expected." Claire's heart wrenched. "That's fine." He turned to her, his eyes softening. "I believe I understand you a little better. You made a mistake, but you also provided me with a family. And I don't want to lose that because of something that happened before I was born." Through her tears, she smiled. "You don't know how much that means to me." Daniel turned to face the stairs, where Michael's silhouette moved in the dim light. "He's my dad," he said simply. "That's never going to change." Claire reached for his hand, and this time he didn't back away. For the first time in months, she slept without nightmares. The truth had broken them apart, but it had also erased everything false between them. What remained was delicate but authentic, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds after too many dreary days. Years later, when Daniel became a father himself, he explained to his daughter that love was not about perfection. It was about forgiveness, the type that takes years to discover, but, once discovered, binds everything together. And sometimes he'd look at his mother and notice the anguish she was still carrying. But he also saw her quiet strength, the kind that holds families together even when the truth threatens to break them. Because love, he discovered, does not erase faults. It merely gives them significance. And, in that sense, They found peace.